All right, what I want to talk about today are two of the most basic tests that we use for electrical testing, and they're essentially the bread and butter of our entire electrical testing. Many of the other tests we're basically expanding upon these tests. So what I want to talk about first is going to be insulation resistance and then contact resistance. So insulation resistance is essentially a simulated bus that I've created. You've got three-phase conductors and you've got a grounded frame behind it, okay? So it's just a lot of electrical tape, some aluminum, and some shielding, all right? And so what I want to talk about is if you're going to use electricity, you want to make sure that the electricity and the charges flow only where you want them to. You don't want them going to other things because we could be standing there, working there, right? So what we want to make sure of is that the electricity stays where we want it to. And that is our insulation resistance. If the insulation starts to fail, it starts going to the ground bars, it starts going to the people that are touching equipment, and that's not what we want. And then the other thing that we want to talk about is contact resistance. And what is contact resistance? Well, we want to make sure with contact resistance, or just resistance, is that in order for the electricity and the charge to get from this end to this end, and from the source to the load, we want to make sure that there's very, very low impedance to that flow, right? And with AC, it's impedance. With DC, it's resistance. But we want to make sure that it's very, very low. And so these two tests are essentially polar opposites. The insulation resistance we want that resistance to be very high. So that way the conductors stay on, or the electricity stays on the conductor. And then contact resistance, we want that resistance to be extremely low, so that way the electricity can flow very fast. And if you imagine it like a highway, right? You want your cars to stay on the highway. You don't want them driving through the forest, but you want them to go fast and you want them to go on the highways, and that's the most ideal, right? So that's how we're going to treat electricity or conductors. And then we're going to start talking about what exactly is insulation resistance and how do these tests, these types of equipment work doing it. And then I'll pull out some contact resistance meter so that way you can see the difference between just using an ohm check and a contact resistance meter. All right, so that's what I want to start off with: insulation resistance and contact resistance. There's a big difference between the two, and all we're trying to do is make sure that electricity stays where it needs to be and that it can also get there as quickly as possible. Okay.